Australians have watched, and we've watched very closely, as the Chinese government has engaged in increasingly alarming activities. The occupation, the fabrication and the militarisation of disputed features to establish 20 outposts in the South China Sea alone. The rejection of The Hague's Permanent Court of Arbitration in 2016 was a verdict on claims of historic rights, and it was presided over by many countries, including China itself. Sending increasing numbers of military jets into Taiwan's air defence identification zone is known to all of us. Using militia-crewed fishing vessels to intrude the Philippines' exclusive economic zone is something we've now come to expect. Imposing a national security law upon Hong Kong, doing away with the solemn international commitment of the one country, two systems framework. Now, escalating tensions on China's border with India and in the East China Sea with Japan cause us significant concern. And I recognise the Japanese ambassador here with us today. Inflicting tariffs and bans on Australian imports like barley and beef and coal and lamb, lobster, timber and wine, for political purposes, undermining collective faith in China's commitment to global free trade and investment. The fabrication of a propaganda image disgracefully depicting an Australian soldier murdering an Afghan child. The issuing of a dossier of 14 disputes with Australia, a list of grievances which imply that our nation should refrain from making sovereign decisions and acting in its self-interest. And its Ministry of State Security engaging in repeated cyber activities against foreign government and commercial institutions, which multiple nations, including Australia, publicly called out in July. Now, regrettably, China is using its increasing power in security, trade and economics, media and the internet to compel compliance at the cost of respect. As China is engaged in these worrying activities, it's also rapidly expanded the size and capability of its military. Today, China has the largest navy in the world, some 355 ships and submarines. Its naval battle force has more than tripled in size in the last 2 decades alone. And averaged over the last 4 years, China has built naval vessels to the equivalent tonnage of the entire Royal Australian Navy fleet every 18 months. By 2030, China's Navy is predicted to number some 460 vessels. China has 2 other fleets subordinated to its armed forces, a Coast Guard that has doubled from 60 to 130 1,000-tonne ships in around a decade, and a maritime militia that routinely has 300 vessels operating in the Spratly Islands on any given day. Now, the Coast Guard alone possesses capabilities and maintains an operational tempo on par with some Southeast Asian nation navies. China has amassed more than 2,000 ground-launched ballistic missiles and ground-launched cruise missiles with a range of up to 5,500 kilometres. Over the next decade, China's nuclear warhead stockpile, estimated to be in the 200s last year, is projected to reach between 700 and 1,000 warheads. Every major city in Australia, including Hobart, is within range of China's missiles. Now, Australians expect their governments to speak frankly about the challenges our nation faces, to not ring-fence them from difficult issues or insult their intelligence, as Paul Keating did from this very stage only a few weeks ago. Both the Prime Minister and I have spoken about how the times in which we live have echoes of the 1930s. The world would be foolish to repeat the mistakes of the 1930s. We live in times of high tension, but the region is not on an inevitable path to conflict. But only if all countries of goodwill ensure together we do our utmost to steer clear of the cliff face, were conflict to come about through misunderstanding, through miscalculation, or through hostility, it would be calamitous for us all. Now, Australia's position is very clear. Conflict must be avoided. And to echo the sentiments of former Prime Minister Menzies, we are for peace. We seek the deep, still waters of the universal peace. We are anxious to live at peace with our neighbours. And Australia has welcomed China's rise as a major economic power in the region. We want China to do well economically. We want to see the Chinese people continue to prosper. Just like the more than 650,000 Chinese-born migrants living here in our country, more than 1.2 million people of Chinese ancestry who call Australia home. These are wonderful Australians who value hard work, family, the rule of law, and are some of our most successful migrant stories. We want a productive trading partnership with China, one that mutually benefits both our peoples. And we remain hopeful that the Chinese leadership has the foresight to choose this path, that it takes the road of diplomacy and negotiation consistent with international law. But the lack of transparency and its rapid military expansion, coupled with a pattern of coercive behaviour, is fuelling concerns in many countries across many oceans. How can the region be assured that China seeks reunification by peaceful means, or that there is a limit to the territorial ambitions? What kind of relationship does China truly seek with its neighbours, Australia included, when it backs aspirations of regional leadership with grey zone cyber effects and economic intimidation? Can there be truly mutually beneficial cooperation when the terms are dictated by one side? Now, Senator Wong would have you think that I shouldn't be asking any of these questions or shouldn't be calling out China's behaviour. But in my view, acquiescence or appeasement is a tactic that ends in a cul-de-sac of strategic misfortune or worse.